about how marriage can impact your express entry profile in various scenarios.
Like this now. And to know more about what happened here.
Basis on your wife's profile or your husband's profile, which is getting added after your ITA, your score will change. If did you post about it on social media, did you travel, so provide some itinerary or receipts.
Hi guys, welcome back to our channel Be Kind. This is Shrey, my husband, and my name is Kriti. Today it's really beautiful out here. This week we had a really warm weather, so the weather gods were really nice to us and we got so much sun. We are wearing our summer outfits finally.
So in the morning we went to a drive test center in Lawrence East to give our driving test. It is one of the only centers which is open on a Saturday, so we both took a bus, went there, but we went about 12 o'clock I think, and by that time they had filled all their applications for that day, so they were no longer accepting it. So we'll have to go again next week.
But we got some information that made me really happy. So I've lived in the US. So I have a American driver's license and it got expired just recently. And I've driven in the US for around 4 years. So I asked them if I can use this and swap it for the Canadian driver license, and they were like, they need my passport, they need my driver's extract from the US, which we already had, and my US driver's license, which is what we also had. So they said after you submit these documents, we can directly swap it to the Canadian driver's license. But this is what a passport should look like, and this is Shrey's passport. And the problem is that I couldn't get that process done because my passport looks like this now. And to know more about what happened here and why does my passport look like this, keep watching this video and we will explain you what happened, what's the story behind this towards the end of this video.
Yeah, so we are doing a two-part series of our Canada PR journey. In the first part, we covered the process till I got an ITA, which was in December of 2020. To do a recap, because that story had so many twists and turns, more than the movie RRR. So we will show you that in a Snakes and Ladders board game. Let's go. So my express entry journey started in Feb 2019 when I took the first steps of creating my express entry profile, which was to take an IELTS exam and get my ECA done through WES. So both these steps were completed in June of 2019, and then due to some issues I created my express entry profile around Feb of 2020, and then COVID happened. So we got busy with COVID and then things started moving along the way. My score was 471. In June of 2020, I got a big ladder which was in the form of PNP. Ontario province invited me, which gave me a 600 points, which took my score to 1071, and in July 2020, I got my ITA. I submitted all the documents in October of 2020, but as I was doing that, I made a mistake in the police clearance certificate, which then IRCC sent me an email stating that my application was getting rejected, and that was the biggest shock, and I moved all the way down here. I picked myself up. I created a new passport because my issue was in the PCC. I created a new passport and started moving up the ladder again. In December of 2020, I submitted my second express entry profile. So after submitting my second express entry profile, I got the ITA in just 7 days, and this was a recap of part 1. So guys, as you can understand, getting the news of an express entry profile rejection is a very, very sad news, and like anybody, I was devastated when this news came to me. I remember I was in a market when I read the email and I just sank on the chair. I almost wept because I thought my plan of coming here would not materialize. But then I thought maybe God has a better plan for me. My favorite song in life and my motto personally as well is that heaven's got a plan for you. And I thought, okay, maybe there is some good at the end of this tunnel, and that really happened as well. There was something better planned for me, and that's when I met this lovely lady who came and walked into my life.
So this is where I joined him in this journey.
So that was the other plan that God had for me, and in this video we will be talking about how marriage can impact your express entry profile in various scenarios. First scenario, we'll talk about if you are married at any point until you have gotten your ITA and you have submitted your documents. Once you submit your documents, you get what is called an AOR, or an application of receipt. So the first scenario, we will be talking about the timeline till you get the AOR. Scenario 2 will be once you have gotten your AOR to the point where you have made your first landing. So that's scenario 2. If you get married in this scenario, in this timeline, we will discuss here. And scenario 3 will be if you're getting married after you have made your landing in Canada. That's scenario 3. And we'll be talking about these 3 scenarios. And our case fell in scenario 2, which we will be talking at greater length in.
So guys, before we move and explain you the scenarios, regardless of where you are in your PR process journey, you need to inform the IRCC about your marriage so that you can plan the process accordingly. So the first scenario is if you get married before submitting your documents after your ITA has come.
So in this scenario also, there can be 2 cases. First is if you're already married at the time of creating your express entry profile, and the second is if you have gotten married after you have gotten your ITA. So Kriti will first talk about the first case.
So if you get married before creating your express entry profile, you need to decide who will be the primary applicant of this PR process. Both of the partners have to give the IELTS exam. They have to get their medical exams done as well. They need to go for the police clearance or do the PCC process and get through the biometrics. A tip for couples who are planning to come to Canada, you can calculate your scores basis your background. So you can use the CRS calculator that will help you figure out who has a better chance of being the primary applicant. So let's take 2 examples here. If the wife has a better background and gets a higher score, she can be the primary applicant and the husband can be the accompanying applicant to that primary applicant. The second scenario is the husband is the primary applicant and gets a better CRS score and has a better background and a better higher score. So the chances of them being picked up in the express entry process are higher. So the wife can be the accompanying applicant here.
So the second stage of this scenario 1 is if you have already gotten an ITA and you get married before submitting your documents, right? In those 2 months, if you're getting married, then in that case, you need to inform IRCC via your form that you have gotten married, and in that case your scores will get recalculated again. Basis on your wife's profile or your husband's profile, which is getting added after your ITA, your score will change. If they have a better IELTS score, your score can go up. So the recalculation of scores can impact your profile, so make the judgment accordingly. So that's scenario number 1. If you want us to make detailed video on it, please write in the comments and we will do that for you. So the second scenario is what happened with us. If you get married after you submit your documents after your ITA, you get what is called an AOR or an acknowledgement of receipt. Once you get an AOR, your score gets locked. Your spouse then does not need to give her IELTS exam, does not need to give her educational or work experience documents.
But the spouse still has to go through the whole PCC process. They still have to get their medical checkup done. That is what I got done. And the partner or the spouse cannot come to Canada without the primary applicant.
So they can't come before. They can either come with them or after them before the COPR expires. As you can guess, this is the best case because the spouse does not need to do a lot of steps. So this is the best scenario that happened with us, and we will be talking more about this scenario and our personal story later on as well. So the third scenario is when you are getting married after you have already landed in Canada and become a permanent resident. If your spouse is living in Canada, you need to follow the inland spousal addition process. And if your spouse is living back in your home country, then you need to follow the outland spousal addition process. The inland one takes about 12 months on an average. The outland one takes about 15 to 16 months as per the latest timeline. So this is a very lengthy process. And if you want us to make detailed video on it, please write in the comments and we will be making a separate video as well.
Now we will talk about scenario number 2, which is what happened with us. So we met in December of 2020. And while Shrey was going through the process of filing his ITA and getting his medical checkups done and doing all that process, so we got engaged in March of 2021 and marriage date was planned to be in July of 2021.
Right after we got married, we had to start the process of getting Kriti's medical checkup and police clearance certificate. So we started that.
Hold up.
Wait a minute.
Actually, we got married on 18th of July. After you get married, I was expecting a nice set of flowers or even chocolates. So I opened my WhatsApp and there was a big message which was by my husband Shrey, and that had a list of things that we need to do. So mind you, it was 19th July that I got that list in the morning, and you can see it on the screen. So there were a bunch of tasks that we were supposed to do, or I was supposed to do rather, for this entire Canada PR process. So it started way earlier than he is talking about.
Yeah, the interesting thing is on number 16th I've written more to come. So but I knew that these things take a long time with the Indian system, and we had to deal with government and so many other things. We did the process as soon as we could, and within about a week we had our marriage registration certificate, and then we started the process of getting new documents for Kriti, as she was changing her name after the marriage. So we got her passport and our PAN card and our Aadhaar card changed within a very short period of time. So that was the reason we started this process very early on.
And I'm glad that we did, because it landed us here. So I'm very glad that he sent me that list and we went through that process at a very fast pace.
So coming back to the scenario, when we got married in July 2021, I informed IRCC via a case-specific form, which is available on their website, that there has been a change in my family composition, that I have gotten married. And when I sent them this update, they sent a reply through an email that they need additional set of documents for them to add a spouse to my profile. I am sharing those list of documents on the screen for you, which included a lot of forms and a police clearance certificate.
So I had to provide all that past 10 years of history, and I was looking at forms rather than planning my vacations. So, but again, as I said, I'm very glad that that happened. So for the police clearance certificate, since I lived in the US for 5 years, I had to get my police clearance certificate process done for the US also, in addition to India. For the US process, we actually got a great service in Delhi. It was very easy. It was a seamless process. They came to our house, took the fingerprints and other details, and within I think a month and a half, I had my police clearance certificate from the US FBI. So these guys did all the process. We will link or pay, put the name below. They charged us around 6,800 Indian rupees.
In addition to that, we were also asked to provide answers to two sets of questions. One I had to answer and one Kriti had to answer. This was for IRCC to determine that our marriage is real and it's not a fraud or a sham, because these things also happen. So we had to answer questions like, where did we meet, how did we meet, when did the marriage happen, did you post about it on social media, did you travel, so provide some itinerary or receipts. And we had those receipts saved from our prior to marriage trips as well as our post marriage honeymoon, so it was easy for us to provide.
So one tip, guys, if you're planning to land to Canada as a couple, do save on those receipts. So we saved on the hotels that we stayed in, all the travel tickets that we had before and after our marriage. So this sort of builds up the proof that your relationship is real and you're planning to land together.
And also we showed social media proofs, like the posts that we put on Facebook or Instagram, so we put snapshots of those. So we submitted all of these documents around September of 2021. And then for many months we did not hear back from IRCC because they were processing the case. We also had to pay a fee of $1,500 to add spouse to the main applicant profile. In June of 2022, we got a request for re-medicals because my medical had expired and Kriti had to give her medical. So in July of 2021, we gave our medical checkups, and then
around July end, I got my biometric request. So I went in there and gave in my biometrics.
Yeah.
And after that, I think...
Yeah, in July end, we got our passport printing request. Yeah. And in August, we gave in our passports. In August end, they had put the COPR stamps. Yeah. And we were ready to land in Canada as a permanent residence.
So guys, that was our entire PR process. If you want us to make more detailed videos on the scenarios that we discussed or more around the entire PR process, please mention it in the comment section below and we can make those detailed videos in the future. So let me come back to my passport that looks like this and tell you the story behind it.
Yeah. So guys, if you know, we recently went to Montreal and we shared a lot about it on our Insta handle. So if you're not following us there, we will link our Insta handle and you can follow that for live updates. So when we got back from Montreal, I was putting both of our passports in the Almirah, and in the Almirah, there was a gap between the wall and the Almirah, and I didn't see that gap because you don't expect there to be a gap in the Almirah and the wall, and the passports fell in that gap. right? So I'm also putting a photo of that for you so that you get a picture. But the passports fell between the almirah and the wall, and there was no way to retrieve them. And we were really shocked. I didn't understand how an apartment could have such a big flaw in their furniture design that you leave such a big gap. So the next day I raised a maintenance request, and people from maintenance came, and the only way to retrieve the passport was to cut the wood in the almirah to retrieve it. And the maintenance guy came with a drill machine, and while he was drilling in the almirah, Kriti's passport got damaged. So that is the story behind how we damaged this passport.
So, we damaged this passport and I was really upset. I was also angry, but there was no way we can do anything about it now, so we have to look at the solution. We will be going through that process of what happens if you lose or damage your passport in Canada.
So thanks a lot for watching the video. In case you are liking our content, please subscribe to the channel. It will mean a lot to us, and look forward to seeing you back in the next video. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.